ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to one of our special interviews here in EU League. As always, we want to bring in members of the community that have contributed a lot to the growth and the history of Rainbow Six. And today I am honored to have my friend here with me. What's your name again? Fabian Helston. If people know you as, this is like Cetra the Imperishable kind of levels, like the Rainbow Six god, the god of Siege, the two-time world champion.
Back-to-back.
Back-to-back champion, the best player in the world, the best player in Europe, the savior of Sweden.
There are a few titles.
The Nordic hero.
Most of them are correct, yeah.
Most of them are correct. Well, Fabian, thank you so much for coming here to Paris, all the way from Sweden, the other side of the planet at this point, might as well be. And for us to chat about your history. This is basically going to be like two boomers talking about Rainbow Six and their history through it, because we've gone through a lot of its history, haven't we?
Since basically December 2015. We've been around for a while.
Definitely so. Well, you know what? Let's talk about then those early days, because a lot of people remember like maybe the G2 days, then the Penta days for the OGs, but not many remember the Fenix days, where it all began with Shas and KS. So talk to me about all of it. How was Fenix back in there? How did it come together, and where did your passion for Rainbow Six really come from in those days?
I actually got bamboozled into buying the game. Do you remember the E3 trailer when people were rappelling down from helicopters down to the roof of house?
I do.
I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. I need to play this game. So I was traveling home from university to my parents' hometown. I bought the game the day before I traveled, so I got to play about 2 hours. And I was like, well, this isn't really like the trailer, but it seems fun. So I kind of missed out on the first part of the competitive scene because I was home on, I think for like an entire month or something like that. So I kind of missed out on the starting parts of stuff. So yeah, I was just playing with some friends back in the day, and we were trying to take it seriously and qualify for the first season of Pro League. Mm-hmm. And this is even before Fenix. There was some guys I played DayZ with back in like the DayZ mod, not even the game. God, yes. So you realize how far back in time this is. We played DayZ mod, we went into Siege because it was tactical and it looked fun. And we started consistently placing top 16, kind of on the back of me. I did really well. I mean, back then I was an Ash Jaeger main. I was a feared one at that.
Everybody starts as an Ash Jaeger
Everyone starts as an Ash Jaeger main, and then I end up on hard support. But we played consistently top 16, and then we had some incident with that team in a prac against Shaz's team when he was a coach. Mm-hmm. And they were a pretty decent team at that time, so I basically just told him outright, like, hey, if you need me, I'm going to be available from now on. And from then, we kind of went into Fenix. At that point, I was already pretty old when it comes to the standard of an esports player, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, 2015, I was 21 years old. I mean, that's kind of old for starting your career.
Yeah, you know, really you're starting like 18, 19 years old, especially nowadays.
Yeah, now I'm even older, Jesus. Mm-hmm. But we started back then, and I was mostly 18-year-olds, so it was like I was the oldest guy there. I had to be the responsible person, and we started out and practiced like just any other team did. And we were kind of like, with Fenix, we were the team that everyone practiced against because we weren't in Pro League, but we were going to be in the next season. So playing against us kind of made it so that you didn't show any of your current opponents anything. And it's an interesting time. I remember qualifying for Pro League with Fenix. It was on Yacht.
Oh, God.
Last map, we had been hiding, well, we hadn't been hiding Yacht. We had been using Yacht as a bamboozle card. Basically, we told everyone we played Yacht. Nobody played Yacht. Not a single team that I heard of played Yacht. And then we went into a team, I think they were called Momentum, with Lackey and Meepy. Uh-huh. Those were our main opponents outside for the Pro League spot. And we played them on Yacht because they called our bluff and didn't ban Yacht in the ban phase. And now we were like, oh no, oh no. We have no idea what we're doing. So we pulled out the most ranked strats ever, and it worked. Then again, I dropped like 14 kills that map as well. back when you went to first 5, that's when you won a game. You won a game on 5 rounds. I dropped 14 kills, and that qualified us for Pro League. Ash Jaeger main with ACOG on both guns. That was the life. I got contacted by Penta that summer. This is after season 2. I got contacted by Penta that summer, and I only had a laptop, a 16-inch laptop that barely ran Siege. It was like 50 FPS. And I just played those guys so hard. I hadn't played a game for about 3 months, and they asked me if I wanted to trial for Penta. And Penta was like, okay, so it was the best team in Europe outside of the French-speaking community. And I said, I know my word, I'm not going to trial. Either you offer me a spot or I'm not interested. It worked. I got my spot. Because they knew what I was capable to do as an individual at that point. And at that point, I wasn't even considered, like, you didn't even have in-game leaders in the game at that point. Nope. It was just like, run and gun and play ranked.
For the first retirement, that was around December, so late in year 1. This is 2016 that we're talking about.
Skipped invitationals, qualifiers. And that's when Six Quattro, together with Pengu, was trying to form a roster. And that's where
Renier, you had S4, and you had Tunisiano as well.
Yeah.
That played together and got close, but they still lost to the NT.
Yeah, that was the Penta roster, but then Pengu was going to play with Six Quattro with the French guys. He was going to be 4 French people in Pengu.
Yeah.
And I put thoughts in Pengu's head because he was a young guy, thoughts that made him realize that playing with 4 Frenchmen is maybe not the most intelligent choice, because as soon as something goes wrong, they're going to kick the guy who doesn't speak French.
Yeah.
Which I think is realistic. I mean, that's what would happen most of the time. But I just planted the seed of doubt in his head and said, look, me and Jonas are going to reform something here. If you join us, we have a spot in Pro League because we have 3 out of 5 players from last season. So you have an option here with us that we wanna try and go for. And that's how that Penta roster was formed. We got picked up by Penta again, even though we had already belonged to Penta. But that's how it was formed. Me planting seeds of doubt in Pengu, me and Jonas wanting to compete. Back then, me and Jonas had this idea of everyone else sucks. So we just play and we have fun because we're so much better than everyone, we're still gonna beat them. And it worked.
It worked for quite a bit, actually. The only dynasty in the history of Rainbow Six.
That's what it ended up with, yeah. And I don't think we're going to see one of those again. I think that the game is developing too much at the moment. I think we're going to see more of an era of regions. For example, I think Brazil is going to be dominating for probably this year and most of next. And it's going to take quite a lot to see them fall down. But I don't think we're going to see one team being dominating as much as the region these days.
Yeah, I agree with you. Things are really moving fast, and if you slip for 1 second, just like NAP did, they smashed everybody at Invitational, and then they got knocked out instantly in Mexico. You can never put your hopes in like, okay, one team will just always win like we used to back in the day. So, but that's the early Penta days.
That's the early Penta days.
You got picked up. And this is to give you a timeline, because you're talking about Brazil right now being a more dominant region in LATAM in general, but Brazil, as LATAM before, did not exist as a Pro League region in these days. APAC did not exist as a Pro League region back in those days. That's how long ago this is. And it's only in that season right after the first Invitational where Brazil, as LATAM, was first introduced. They had only played, was it like one show match? It seems like a long time ago. We're gonna go through nostalgia. Prepare yourself for a nostalgia trip. So I hope you got the time to get some cocoa. If not, this is the time to pause the video, go grab some hot cocoa and kind of sit back, because this is a nostalgia trip for all the OGs out there.
We have a lot to talk about, that's for sure. There are lots of stories and lots of fun stuff happening.
We'll get to it. So that first Invitational, even Penta, don't make it there. I know Siskat was very salty about it.
He's salty about everything.
That's true. Sisu made it to the event. He's like, oh, they were only consistently losing. I remember. This is a public thing. It's a joke. That's why he made the Salty Academy after it. Fair enough, capitalizing on it. But ESG made it. They got KO'd very quickly. Same as EU in general. And then you start that first season. So what was back then called Year 2, Season 1, which is now Season 4 in the whole lineup of Pro League until Season 11, that is. And you guys play and you demolish everybody. Because in that season, that was to qualify into Pro League, it was only the top 4 teams that were in there immediately, because it was out of 8, and the bottom 4 got relegated, and they have to fight back in like a mini qualifier league to make it back into the next season. And you guys were in, you made it to the Pro League finals in Katowice, the first one I got to cast in person.
Yep.
And you're there with the entire team. You had a 6th player, you had a coach. That's something that did not exist at all back in those days. So how did that come to be?
Falco had won with Youngtis back in year 1, season 2. He had won the Pro League finals with Youngtis, and everyone thought he was cheating back then, like he was just the pulse god of the game. I had to go to a family trip in the US. My dad's, I can't even remember, he's old as a bat now. 50th birthday, 55th, something like that. It must have been 50. Yeah, it must have been 50. We had a pre-planned trip that was planned way before I even played. So I had to go there, and we obviously needed to find a substitute player for that game. It's just so funny, because this is back in the time where you didn't make any money. Like, it just was, you couldn't live off of it. I think at this point we made like €100 a month as our salary, something like that. So we're still talking about it being an amateur league. Mm-hmm. I had to travel, so we needed a player for that one game. It could have been that if we lost that game, we would have to play another one. And if we won that, we would have qualified as well. But so we had to win either of the games. The first one I couldn't play, so they won that with Falco. So we had the sub for that. And then when we come to boot camp to go for the Katowice LAN, Falco wasn't supposed to play, because he was just supposed to be the sub for one game. But KS had to work in the supermarket because his parents didn't allow him to go to boot camp. They were like, you need to get the job that pays money. So for 3 days of our 1 week boot camp, KS wasn't allowed to attend. So during those 3 days, we practiced 3 specific maps, which in case we would play it on stage, Falco would be playing. And the coaching situation, I mean, I think that Chaz was, obviously I don't know as much about him these days as I do about back then, but at that point he was a very much person knower. He knew how to handle people that were difficult, because you had to deal with difficult people. Mm-hmm. I mean, at some point you look at the people that we had in that team, with especially me and Pengu being harsh people to work with. We're not the friendliest guys in terms of we are very professional and put friendship second to winning. And not everyone agree with that. So for him to be able to control people in terms of understanding each other, that's main reason we had him, but also his statistical work and understanding what they would do on the map was good. Maybe not so much about like playing the game on his own. For example, when Glass could open hatches, it took Chaz about 9 months to figure that out. We sat in a practice on Coastline one day, and Chaz goes, "Guys, do you know you can open hatches with Glass?" We're like, "Chaz, that's been in the game for 9 months."
Oh my God.
Yeah, so maybe he didn't know the game that well, but he knew what the opponents were going to do on the map, the operators, what they did. Sometimes I wonder if he knew what an ADS was. But yeah, we had people that fulfilled roles that others couldn't.
I mean, the team Penta was unique in those days.
I mean, I think other teams had coaches, but that was more like 18-year-old guys that they weren't good enough to play the game, so they said that they were a coach.
The only 2 people that were known at that time for coaches, and back then coaching, it's not like today where you have like 2 or 3 support staff per team. It wasn't like that. So the person had to come in and basically be a babysitter, let's be honest.
Yep.
That's half of your job as a coach back then.
Yep.
And the other half is I can give my team stats that they can use to build strategies. And that's something that, especially in those days, Shas was incredibly good at, but there was Ranger in North America that had that. And back in those days, that was it. When it comes to coaching and what was available with the resources, that because you can't ask somebody to be, coach with the tools that we have today and with the amount of money that people get paid in comparison.
I mean, today you can get paid really well to be the top tier coach. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
You probably, like, there are some teams where coaches probably make more than the players, and it's fully understandable because the work that they put in is a different one that we do, and you have to value their skill sets a different way. Today, a coach isn't a player that was too washed up to play.
Yep. There's somebody that really has their eye on a specific thing to do.
Yeah.
They need to handle the managerial part and the number/strategy, and that's why you have a coach, you have an analyst, and then you have coaches that are just team-building coaches in their own way, managers as well, something that G2 and BDS has in their own, a lot of teams do, so understandable. But you go to that LAN final, KS can play, right?
Yeah, he was there.
You all went there, and you were kind of rotating Falco and KS depending on the specific maps. We saw it even in the grand final that you guys played there, and it was a beauty to see. But you were already a great player to watch during those tournaments and online as well. How did you even warm up for all of these games? Because you must be being such a god of Rainbow Six Siege that you had such a specific rhythm and way of preparing for all of your games and for years to come that you would always be aiming true and hitting those shots exactly how they should be, right, Fabian?
For me, back then, I've never been a mechanically talented player. Like, sure, I have mechanics that I can shoot back. Mechanics in a competitive way is a completely different mechanics than you have in ranked.
Yeah. Like
the flashy shots and the flicks, sure, they have a space in professional play, but it's nowhere close as what people envision it to be. A good aimer can do a lot, but if that aimer lacks the head and the mentality to play on a competitive level, it doesn't matter how talented you are.
Yep.
Like, I see it these days. Now that I play with basically a tier 4 team, the guys that I'm playing with, they're 18 years old. They're much more talented mechanically than I am, but they don't read the game as well, which means that they don't always deliver better results. Quite a lot of the time opposite, actually. And that's something that people don't realize about Siege. But mechanics, they are important, but to me, it's just about having... You have to have fun when you play the competitive games, but at the same time as you have fun, you're there to win.
We'll talk about the fresh blood situation back then and mostly now in EU League in a bit, but I want to focus on the start of the Dynasty, because that event was the first one of a string of events that you ended up winning. You took Season 4, which is Year 2, Season 1. Then you took Gamescom after that.
Yep.
And then you took the... well, you didn't take the next event because that was ENCE's victory.
Yep.
But you lost to the eventual, technically should have won it, but hey, EU got it and that's what we had. Somehow. And then you went to Invitational. You won it there.
Yeah.
So that was a great start. 2018 was definitely the year of Penta Sports until you switched over to G2. So how did you maintain that? How do you think that you were allowed to have this dynasty when the big matches were always, is G2 going to play EG or Penta going to play EG again? And how will it be throughout 2018? It just seems impossible to do that nowadays.
I think it's going to be impossible, but if we look back at, like, for example, Katowice, I think that we were quite ahead of other teams. Both when it comes to mechanics, we had probably the best 5 players that we could possibly find. But also, we also were ahead of them in strats in terms of how to play the game and how to adapt and how to play around the operators that you have. I remember when we came up to Katowice, we were so green, like you have no idea. We were such rookies. We didn't know that we needed to have in-ears. We had no idea. We didn't bring any. Like we knew that.
I remember Pengu with his big-ass headset trying to play on there.
Yeah. Or, sorry, no, we didn't bring headsets because we thought that everything would be provided. We had in-ears. We didn't have headsets. We didn't have a microphone for practice. That's what the problem was. We couldn't practice because we had no microphones. How would we communicate? We still practiced. And when we beat Flipside back in the day, I think we beat them 5-1 on border without having a single call-out. Like, we didn't know what was going on. We were like, okay, these guys have been around for a long time. We're coming to our first event. And then we managed to basically show them how to play the game without being able to communicate. Our communication was, well, chat, team chat. We wrote in chat when we wanted to give a call out. What else could we do? So back then already there was something that was just clicking for us when it came to playing the game as a team.
What set you apart then? Like, is it just your teamwork? Is it something...
Synergy, I think I would say it, and understanding of the game. I think that, for example, playing with Nick, Pengu, for me, him and I always looked at the game the same way. So a lot of the time when we were in man disadvantage, we didn't even need to communicate that much because we understood each other and we understood what was the next step of everything we had to do. Even though we were in a man disadvantage, or even though the advantage was like they had to make the play the opponent. I think that everyone in the team understood each other to a different level. So like the back three line, when you look at me, Pengu, and Goga, we understood each other how to play the game. And then you had the front line that were able to basically outperform anyone else when it came to mechanics. Sure, we swapped around a bit of players. Like, for example, we swapped out KS because we saw some weakness in him when it came to being confident. And then we swapped out Chatte after some internal stuff. And we got Kanto instead. So it's like we've always had some sort of changes, but when we look at it, when we picked up Chatte, for example, that was just after their win in Brazil. He was probably considered the best player in the game at that point. So we picked him up. And then when we parted ways with Chatte and we picked up Kanto was probably considered the most talented player coming up. And at that time, he was fairly inconsistent. And then for some reason, when he came to us, how consistent was Kanto? Like Kanto,
2018 was the year of Kanto.
Kanto was Mr. Consistency. So it's like we had mechanics, but we also had the understanding of the game, and I think that's what put us apart. It's just interesting. We had such a strong team spirit as well. I look back at Gamescom, so season 5, I think that would be, where we're playing. I can't remember what name there were. The Brazilian team with Astro. Was it Font back then?
Font.
Yeah, we played Font. I think that was the quarterfinals. I'm not.
Was it with Moringa? Was it on Org?
Yes, I think it's your play. But
I know that.
It's like Pengu dropped what 17 kills that map. You want to know how many kills he dropped in the 2 maps previous to that? 3. So in 2 maps before that, he dropped 3 kills. And the only thing we could say to him is, "You'll find it eventually." And when you have that trust between teammates and like the understanding between each other that even if shit hits the fan, we hold each other's back and people get their chances with us. We're not going to replace someone because 1 bad game. We're not going to replace someone for 2 bad games.
For sure.
You need to, over a long time, not do your part to be replaced. And that's the sort of spirit we had with everyone. And when you have that, it kind of becomes a different feeling inside the team, you know? It's you trust each other. You're gonna get your chance. You're gonna know when something is bad, when something is happening. You're gonna know what you need to improve.
Everybody has an off day.
Yeah, and you can have off months as that. It's just that I think that a lot of teams, even today, they are handling situations on a whim, and it's just a kind of gut feeling changes that people are making and changing out players left, right, and center. I mean, now I'm skipping ahead in time again, but look at G2. The current G2 roster has made as many changes in a year as we did for 4 or something like that. And that kind of, to me, shows how it's not obviously just G2, but teams change players fast. And we didn't back then. I think we had something with the mentality that we gave people chances.